Spring Awakening is the start of something new.
Definitely quite the experience.
It's just laying it all out and saying, here it is, take it or leave it.
If you look at Spring Awakening as a whole, it deals a lot with the sexual awakening of children.
Self-labeled children's tragedy.
It deals with homosexuality and rape and lots of really intense issues.
Spring Awakening is controversial, and some might even say it's shocking, but it is educational, and I think you could benefit from watching it. The role that I played with Henshin, played by Kevin Bart, we had to make out, and there were obviously a few controversial scenes in this show, but I think the two of us are advanced actors and pretty comfortable with theater and what we have to do as actors. So we were just like, yeah, we're gonna go for it. The sooner we just go for it, the better we're gonna be by performance time. So the kissing part, the awkward teenage touching part, we were just like, yeah, this is happening. So we just kind of went for it.
Garrett was very open to ideas. He had his own ideas that he wanted, that he originally had us using, but the way, when we first sat down and did our initial read-through, that it was eye-opening to the different themes and experiences that everybody had to go through and that we went through in the play.
The rape scene was one of the more difficult ones because not only did it involve all the emotions that come along with rape, but I also had to portray an animal at the same time and become an entirely different character along with being Melchior at the same time. So one of the things I did was to walk like the animal, and that really kind of helped me while doing my lines at the same time as walking like the animal. I can kind of meld the two together and become that kind of coexisting character.
When I act, I become that character, and I breathe like them, I walk like them, I think like them. So I just decided beforehand what Ilsa's thinking about when she's describing this terrible rape that happened to her, and she sees it as she's talking. And so in character, I was just saying my lines, and then I started seeing myself in her situation, and it was horrifying and really scary, and I think when you do that you can't help but break down. So I hope people got the reality of that, because that was intense.
I absolutely do think that he was ahead of his time. You can see it in the play that all the adult characters that he writes about are very close-minded and very strict on how they teach and how they raise their children. But Wedekind himself, I think he kind of portrayed himself in Melchior's parents, where they're very open with their child and they're totally free to explain everything that he has questions about.
It was banned because of its controversial topics, and because back then this kind of stuff was not something that was openly talked about. It was very looked down upon, and because of that, they took it down, and luckily we still have it today.
The fact that this show dealt with things that people still today feel uncomfortable with shows that he was adventurous and willing to explore things that needed to be talked about. So, and it's crazy too, because it was avant-garde for its own time, but now things that are avant-garde might just be like edgy because art is edgy, whereas that was like, hey, maybe we should be talking about this.
At that time, you know, especially in Germany, it was, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about homosexuality, this doesn't exist, it's the church, that's all there is. And the younger generation at that time was actually starting to think for themselves and being like, hey, maybe not. And so Frank Wedekind focused on that, and I think did a lot of research, and I think made Spring Awakening to play with everybody's thoughts and emotions and saying what is right, what is wrong. He did it to persuade and to antagonize and to make people think, which I think art is about.
I believe this play deals with important issues. Is it important for society to see? Not necessarily. I think that people can value from seeing it, specifically people who don't have as much of a free mind when it comes to things that your children should know. But those are more often than not going to be the people who don't see it. So, what can you do?
I do think it's important. I think it's good to get these topics out there instead of just keeping it all bottled up and closed off from society, because these things do happen and it is real, and that's why I like the play so much, because it wasn't so much. I mean, we did have fantasy aspects of it, but it wasn't entirely fantasy. It was a true story. It could have been true, and so I think it's good that people would see this kind of thing and know that it's real life.
It is very taboo that homosexuality in our society today is very. It's a very fragile subject. So being so fragile that we can do it here in theater, where people can come and see the show and see it and have different interpretations on it. I think that something like this being in the show is actually something that people will see.
I think Spring Awakening is definitely the start of a whole new era of theater, because it touches things that people don't want to touch, and it brings to light that things that people want to keep in the dark. And I think that's liberating. It's scary and it's disturbing, but it also feels good to get things out that you've been hiding and not be deceitful anymore. And I've seen in recent years several plays dealing with, homosexuality, with rape, and that wouldn't have been possible if Spring Awakening hadn't opened the doors.